So, local government can often have a complicated relationship with developers. Oftentimes, these are two groups that do not see eye to eye. So, today I thought it would be cool to highlight a project where the city and the developer just worked really well together. So well, in fact, that they agreed to come onto a podcast and talk with me about it. So today we're going to travel to Yorba Linda, California. We're going to talk with Brett Foy of Zelman Development and Colleen Callahan, who is the Economic Development Manager with the City of Yorba Linda. And we're going to hear the story of Yorba Linda Town Center. You're listening to Where We Buy. It's the show where we talk with retail experts and we visit the places where we buy. My name is James Cook. I research retail and real estate for JLL. So our topic today is about how cities can work with developers. And to dig into this, we have got a real city employee and a real retail developer. And our case study today is the Yorba Linda Town Center in Yorba Linda, California.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
So on behalf of the city of Yorba Linda, we've got Colleen Callahan. Colleen, introduce yourself.
Thank you again, James, for having us on. And Brett, thank you for joining us. So yes, I'm the Economic Development Manager for the city of Yorba Linda in Orange County, California. And I've actually been with the city for over 25 years. So I'm very fortunate to be very familiar with the community. And I love it. It's a great community and I'm glad to be a part of it and opportunity to work for Brett and Zelman.
That's awesome. And so Brett Foy, you're with Zelman Development. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thanks for having me. And yes, our company is I would say a kind of a traditional developer. We're a small company, but we've done some big projects. We've been around for a long, long time. The company was founded in the mid 60s. My partner Paul Casey and I are the third owner of the company. We've worked for the company for 25 plus years, but our senior guy retired in 2015, and we took it over then. So we've owned it for 10 years now, and we've done a lot of big box retail, especially in the 90s and 2000s. We've done a lot of industrial and a little smattering of other stuff. But we're a very traditional developer. We like to build and own and keep long term, and we have really enjoyed retail and done a lot of retail, but not doing as much as we used to.
So for those folks that aren't familiar, and maybe Colleen, I'll ask this of you, how do you describe Yorba Linda?
Yorba Linda is it's known for their sense of community, our sense of community. It's got quiet neighborhoods, fairly large lots. It's a very long community, east and west, but we all work together. It's a suburban area. We're about 15 minutes from Disneyland, Angel Stadium, the Honda Center. So we can get to some really fun activities pretty quickly, but yet we can come back to our quiet neighborhoods and enjoy our retail and our food establishments right here. So again, it's a very community-oriented, residential, family-oriented community, and it's a great suburban area here.
Gotcha. Yeah, I haven't been in person. I think the closest was Disneyland. I've definitely been to Anaheim before. So you're in the LA Metro and you guys are in what you would call like northern Orange County. Is that right?
Right. We're the northernmost city, I believe, of Orange County and the furthest east. We actually are very unique in the sense that we actually border two other counties, literally Riverside County and San Bernardino at the 91 and the 71. So we actually attract people from Riverside and San Bernardino into Orange County, and Yorba Linda is the first place to stop.
So Brett, from a retail perspective, what's your take on, and maybe we can go back in time and talk about what your take was before you started developing our case study today. Like what was the retail scene in Yorba Linda pre the town center?
Yeah, I would add one thing to what Colleen said, and she was modest. The other thing about Yorba Linda is a very high income area for retail. And what's interesting about it is it's not the ultra high end like you might have in parts of Newport Beach or parts of West LA, but it's very solid, good, solid high incomes across the board, and it's not super dense. So the challenge was you have, you know, let's call it, A minus to A incomes, high incomes, not ultra high. It's not, the multi hundreds of millions class. But very, very, very good incomes, but not a lot of density. Big lots, there's hills. So we didn't have a ton of density. Now, kind of going back to your question, there wasn't a lot of, in our opinion, real high end retail there. It was pretty standard. I would call it kind of, B plus shopping centers. And we thought that's the niche that we could bring, and that the city wanted. And so we wanted to bring something, kind of higher end, frankly, than we'd ever done before, and higher end in what the city had. And I think that's what we accomplished.
And you said like your history was in kind of power centers, like big box, but this, would you call this a lifestyle center? How would you describe this project?
A little bit. I would say it's a total lifestyle center. It's kind of a town center. So what happened was the city went out for RFPs, and there were a few strong responses. But my understanding, and of course I didn't see the other people's responses, was that most people kind of proposed a market drug center with some shops, which would be probably the most profitable, normal thing to build. But our impression was that wasn't what the city wanted. So we proposed a much more dense project, more pedestrian oriented. Originally, we had plans for a high end market, and then as we started working on it, we realized we had both a high end market interested and a high end movie theater. So we went back to the city and said, let's expand the site. We got two great uses here rather than pick between them. We couldn't fit them both in the original site. So it took several years, but we and the city together were able to assemble some other sites to make it bigger. And then we ended up putting in a high end grocery store, which is Bristol Farms, and a high end movie theater, which we put in a 50,000 foot Regal, 10 screen Regal, brand new, and that gave us kind of the nighttime and the daytime draw. So we were able to get a lot of, eateries and other places to go and create what we think is a good town center with both the day and the nighttime draw.
So, Colleen, during this stage of the development, kind of, there's an RFP and then there's like the actual development of finding the tenants. You in economic development, as the economic development manager, like what is the role that you would play?
All transparency, I was not the economic development at the time, but my predecessor, Pam, who is amazing, did a great job working with Brett and Paul.
Why do you think, and I know you might not be able to speak to this directly, Colleen, but like in hindsight, why is this format of the town center more appealing than, grocery drug, anchor?
Well, to be honest, it's the expectation of our community. This came out of a town center specific plan. I think that was started back in 2010, 2011. So there was a Blue Ribbon Committee of the community that helped put the specific town center specific plan together, in which the city used that as a guideline in choosing the developer, and Zelman Development fit that. The community did not want just the drugstores and the basic. They wanted a nicer, higher end town center that did meet beyond the basics, and aesthetically the same thing. And I think that's why Zelman was chosen. They met the community's input during those town center specific plan outreach.
So you've got excellent plans, and then plans hit reality. When, Brett, when did the town center open?
Well, that's a bad answer. Unfortunately, it was right before COVID hit.
Right.
So we opened in late 2019, and what was a big effect was our theater was just kind of getting their feet under them when COVID hit, and theaters all had to shut down. The market, I think, did great during COVID. A lot of our restaurants did poorly, of course, but the theater got absolutely demolished. Right after they opened, they didn't open again for, I don't know, a year and a half or something like that.
And so
So I don't know if you remember how the theaters rolled out. They came out, 9 months later, and you had to sit every 5 seats and wear masks and all that stuff, and that didn't work. They closed again. It was a real disaster for the theater business.
And do you have the same theater operator today, or is it switched out?
We do. Regal went through bankruptcy, and we had to renegotiate their lease to keep them. It was a brand new Regal, and we had other theaters that wanted to be there, but the whole theater business reset. After COVID. Before COVID, the theater business was doing great, and like we had a brand new theater. We were getting great rent from Regal. We picked Regal because they were the strongest financially, and I think maybe the biggest too. They were biggest and strongest. They were great. But when COVID hit, all the theaters went. A lot of them ceased to exist. Other groups that we talked to don't even exist anymore. Regal did come out of bankruptcy, but we had to lower their rent to, make it work for them. And so they're still there at a lower rent, which was a big impact to us. But their business is starting to rebound now, and they closed. There was another Regal nearby that they closed around this time frame, which also helped us. And there was a third small theater that also closed. So our Regal's now kind of the only game in town, and it's doing better. It's not doing, the numbers I don't think it's doing the numbers they thought they were going to do at the beginning, because the whole theater business has gone down, but I think they're doing well again.
So you've been open 6 years. So would you say that it's become a part of the community now?
Yeah, definitely. And we've had not great turnover. We've had a little bit of turnover, as all centers do, but our core tenants have all stayed the same. We have, our kind of key, food tenants out on pads. We have a Cafe Rio, a Blaze Pizza, a Habit, a Pete's Coffee. They've all remained. We've got some, shop tenants come and go, but for the most part, it's been pretty solid, and I think the community has taken to it well. One thing that was I didn't mention earlier, when we expanded the site to add the land for the theater, the city also decided to build a area-wide parking structure, not for our site, but for kind of the whole area. So we were able to buy spots in that parking structure, which enabled us to get higher density on the project, because we didn't have to, meet the parking codes just on our site. We bought into the parking lot, and other tenants in the area or other owners in the area have also done the same. So you could build a restaurant that needs, 20 parking spaces, and have 10 parking spaces and buy 10 from the city in the public parking structure. And that helps the city income-wise for the parking structure and the cost. And it is a big savings, a savings potentially to the developer. And maybe not a savings, but it enables you to build more than you otherwise could build.
Right. If I can just tap into that too, that's exactly right. We also have our downtown Main Street right next to Town Center. So the forethought of, the developers and the city staff and council at the time was to actually add in Arroyo Street, or Street A, whatever we want to call it, to connect the two. So with the name of Town Center, we wanted to make sure that it was the Town Center combined, literally attached to our downtown historical Main Street. And so to your point, Brett's point too, it is the hub of the city. And, the ability to pull in the Main Street and the Town Center together, it just adds even more of a sense of community. And we're building on that. After COVID, trying to get everybody back out of their homes and have a gathering place. So that's been a big part of it. And the community is engaged in that now, and that was their hope during the whole specific plan, the Town Center specific plan. So it's kind of fun to see that coming to fruition now.
And Main Street has turned over nicely. It hasn't fully turned over, but several of the spaces have turned over. There's a couple of nice restaurants there now. It's greatly improved, and we knew it would. We thought we'd be the best thing that happened to Main Street, we built a brand new center and the rents were high, and you can go, next door to us, the Main Street, where the rents were quite low. I'm sure they're not as low now, but it's another alternative. And if we had I'll use an example. If we have a Habit Burger, we can't also add another burger place. So the other burger place, in theory, can go into Main Street. So it's been a big improvement to Main Street, I believe.
Yeah, we're continuing that. There's a revitalization, and that's a big thanks to Town Center. It's really kind of re-engaged the tenants that have, and the owner, the buyer, or the property owners of Main Street. Like, they see the potential, and it's exciting. Things are happening thanks to Town Center.
That's awesome. I wanted to bring you both on the show because it's such an example. You're a living example of, you've got the city and a developer that work pretty well together. So Colleen, I'll start with you. How does Yorba Linda think about developers, and is it differently than other cities, or like, what's your take on that?
That's a good question. Is it different than other cities? I've only worked in a couple other cities, but I think each city is somewhat different in the sense, we want to talk local control. Let's use the Town Center specific plan. The community had a lot of input. And so we think each city thinks a little different. We're different than Anaheim. We're not small, but we're not big like Anaheim. So yeah, we're going to probably have a different take on developers to some extent. Our community thinks that, obviously we're driven by, the economy and sales tax. We love retailers. We want developers in here to create that sales tax for us so that we can continue to be the third safest city, I think, in California. I just have to throw that in there. So yeah, retailers, developers, come to us. We got the safety part down. So, we look at, how is this going to have impact to the community, this certain retail or development coming in? So our community is very aware, how's that going to affect traffic? We look at that. I don't know, how the bigger cities think about that. Like, let's just get the sales tax in. Our community, our Yorba Linda, tries to see balance, with our residents, and our commercial businesses coming in. So do we treat developers maybe a little different than other cities? Quite possibly, but in general, we still have to adhere to, state parameters and retail parameters, and bottom line, we need sales tax to keep the cities nice and beautiful.
Brett, how's your experience working with different cities? Is there a lot of variety out there?
Yeah, so I've worked with lots and lots of different cities and all over the board. From cities that want no development, that are anti-development, to cities that are business oriented. Yorba Linda's on the best side of that from a developer's perspective. They want now, of course, we want to build everything as efficiently as possible, and the city, of course, held us to high standards, and we built the center to high standards, but the city wanted the business. They wanted the quality. We've had other cities we work in, they said, we don't want a shopping center. Now, we didn't get much of that because of what Colleen said, the sales tax. Most people want the sales, most places want the sales tax, but we've had one. Before I got on this call, I was on a phone call with a retailer that wanted to be at a site we owned 10 years ago. And we went to a city, and the city said, no, we have one of your competitors here, and we don't want you. And we're now about to redevelop the site. And I called the guy and said, would you want to take another look at that? And he said, yes, we would. And we got shut down, 10 years ago. Maybe it's different. Let me look at it. So you never know, but that's a city that doesn't want retail. They're an anti-growth city. We did a couple of big projects in Burbank, and they were super great to work with at the time. I don't know that it was a long time ago. It was 20 years ago. We built the biggest center there, and it added a lot of sales tax. I don't know if they're still as business oriented as they were then, because now they have all that sales tax. We've had experience where we built large centers in smaller cities where we doubled the sales tax in the city, and 10 years later, they're not as excited about adding new retail, because they have that sales tax. So, but Yorba Linda was great to work with.
So you think about like the structure. I know different city governments are different, but I always think, there's usually a mayor, there's some kind of city council, and then there's also the employees that aren't elected. So how does that all work? Like, do you have to work with the mayor and city council as a developer, and then they tell other people what to do? Like, what's that behind the scenes like?
So, obviously our elected officials and each city is different, whether our county is different. For Yorba Linda specifically, we have 5 elected, generally elected. We don't have districts on our city. I think it's well represented as is. But basically, the council sets policy. They set the vision and the mission, and as staff, we implement it. We follow up with that, and obviously we have opinions and expertise and technical skills that in our job is provide the facts and educate our officials. Again, they're residents. They're elected officials, but they're residents. So we have to continually remind ourselves of that. And we have a city manager that runs interference as needed. But ultimately, they set policy, and we follow up and provide them the information they need to make educated decisions.
Yeah, I would reiterate that. We work, I would say 98% with the staff of the city. Once in a while, you'll have a city council person in the district that's very interested in the project and gets involved a little bit. But for the most part, we're working with the economic development director, the planners, the city manager. We're working with the staff, and then we go before the council for all of our approvals. And so once in a while, we'll meet the council along the way to give them, more information. There's laws on what you can and can't do. You have to have no more than 2 in a room at a time, and the Brown Act. There's things like that. But we'll maybe meet with 1 or 2 key councilmen that are very interested in the project. Sometimes we'll meet with all of them individually, but it's 98% or so working with the staff.
And then if I can just tag on that too as well, just remind, we also have commissions. So they're appointed, not necessarily elected, but we work very closely with our planning commission, as Brett knows. I mean, that's where a lot of the approvals happen. You have traffic commission to deal with circulation issues. So most cities have separate commissions. Some smaller cities, some their council acts as their planning commission as well. Yorba Linda does have planning and traffic, and we all work together and move things through.
That's fascinating. So, Brett, when you're going before the council to present a project, that seems like that's a real big pivot point. That's a big deal. I mean, do you rehearse that? Do you spend weeks prepping for it, or what's that like?
No,
No.
I don't. I probably should. No, by the time you get to that point, the project so well. Sometimes we'll have an architect that will present the pictures and stuff, and I might be available for questions. I had a presentation with city last week, and it was just informational. The city's very interested in the project, and the council wanted an update, and the city staff did a long presentation, probably, I don't know, 8-10 minutes or something. And then I got up, they asked me a couple questions, and they asked staff questions, and there was no action to be taken. But no, don't really have much of a rehearsal or much of a plan. Just a lot of it is just answering questions and just telling someone about the project. And like in Yorba Linda, you'd say, we wanted to, kind of like I told you, we wanted to create a town center. We wanted a daytime and a nighttime draw. Everybody loves a market because people come to a market every day. If you have a Best Buy as opposed to a market, you don't go to a Best Buy every day. So it's not as good for, you don't want to be a Subway sandwiches or a Pete's Coffee next to a Best Buy as much as you want to be next to a grocery store. And then, people don't shop at night for groceries as much, or people don't go to a Best Buy as much at night. Theater they go to at night. So it was also good from a parking perspective. We had a daytime and a nighttime draw, makes the parking work more efficiently. So I describe things like that and what we're trying to accomplish. And, what usually you go to these city council meetings or community meetings, all they want to talk about is who the tenants are. And that's always something that's not great for us, because if we say, we got Pete's, well, we like Starbucks, or, you say we got, this market, we like that market. And that's not what we want to do. We do the best we can. And you might not have both markets want to be there. You might have X market that wants to be there and they want Y market. Y market is not interested. So you don't want to get into arguing about the tenants. And also, typically, we don't want to announce who the tenants are until further down the road, because the tenants don't want to be embarrassed either. If you say we have X market and we're in negotiation and they change their mind and say, well, we decided not to go to Yorba Linda, they don't want people to say, oh, they bailed on Yorba Linda. So we try to keep that to ourselves as much as we can, but that's what everybody wants to talk about.
And everybody's got an opinion on, what would be great there? You need to get. Sure, you have that conversation all the time.
I can't tell you how many cities I've gone to. They say, we want a Trader Joe's. They all want Trader Joe's. Everybody loves Trader Joe's.
Right. Yeah, I hear that quite a bit too. That's so funny. So after we talked about the development, the town center opens. After it opens, what is the role? And Colleen, I'll ask you, what's the role then of the city and you as in the economic development as the economic development manager? What's your role then with the center now that it's open?
I kind of established a relationship with the property managers, to be honest with you. And, we're here to support them. If they're having, random issues, it could be, trash issues, working with the trash company and things like that. I have a contact with, the trash company, and I can help kind of run interference. There's an issue in, we find residents will call us because they think we own everything in the city when we really don't own anything. So it's really just kind of running interference and be that liaison so that maybe the property manager doesn't have to deal with it. And I can just deal with the property manager. Hey, FYI, we understand there's an issue in the commons area. Can just letting you guys know we're getting calls from the community / constituents. So if you can kind of look into that. So trying to create that, keeping that relationship with the property managers. And then also just expanding and helping to, do outreach and publicize the tenants. We have a Shop Dine Support Yorba Linda campaign. We've created a business directory. Again, it just letting the community know about new tenants that come in. I talk to the property manager or Carol, the leasing agent, and when they're ready to let us know, or I may know something coming in, dealing with new tenants coming in, they got to get through sometimes the CUP process, tenant improvements. They have to get inspections from the city. So I do on occasion have to step in and run interference there and kind of encourage the timeline to speed up a little bit. So I'm kind of the in between, working with our building department, our planning department, and the developer and the tenants, which I love to do. I want to see things get fixed and moved on and make everybody happy.
I would say three things that I think the city, post really helps with us. In this case, we were more intertwined with the city because of the parking structure, which was adjacent to us. And so early on, we had, kids that were going in there and skateboarding and going up on the top of the parking structure and having a picnic and drinking and things like that. Now, it's not our property, but it affects our property. So we would call the city and they would, lickety split, have the sheriff out there, and we put a kibosh to that pretty quickly. The other thing that the city did and cities do is, Colleen will get a lot of calls from tenants, say, hey, we're interested in being in Yorba Linda. Mm-hmm. And she's a good source of, of calls, because they're going to call her where they're going to call one specific project. And so we'll get a call from Colleen or someone like Colleen in another city and say, hey, by the way, whatever, Chipotle is looking for a new spot, whoever it may be. And the one final thing that I would mention is there was a council person in Yorba Linda who was the former mayor, and she did a great thing. I followed her on, I don't know, it was Facebook or whatever it was.
Oh, yes.
And she would go to all the new tenants anywhere in Yorba Linda. And, of course, during this era, we were a lot of them. And she would do an interview with the general manager and walk through the store and say, gosh, I'm here at Pete's Coffee. They're in the Yorba Linda Town Center, and they just opened today. And let me show you around. And it was really great. I know she still does that when
yeah,
she does
she does first look videos. So when I find out something going into town center, kind of give her a little heads up. And yeah, she does a great job for slip videos. And then whoever the mayor at the time is, makes an effort to reach out as well.
Colleen, what advice would you give to a developer looking to work with a city? And I guess this could be general, any city, or you could just do Yorba Linda specific, kind of whatever you want.
Mm-hmm. But call me first. Number one, call the economic development manager. Obviously, developers know they got to work with planning first and so forth. But I don't think developers reach out to us as much as maybe they should. Maybe, I don't know. Brett could tell you differently. But a lot of times, I'm kind of like second or third, call in there, or somehow, staff comes to me and like, well, let me create the relationship and let me help streamline the communication. And again, I think they should call me. I have the internal processes down here and the relationships here. In general, I think they should reach out to economic development managers more so, or at least ask them to be part of the process when they reach out to the planners. Find out if they have one, and if so, if that's something that they'd be willing to bring in part of the process.
That makes sense. All right, Brett, from your point of view as the developer, what advice would you give to another developer who's looking to work with any city?
Well, I'm thinking the key to my success has been I do exactly what Colleen says. We always try to work with the economic development person first, and I don't think I've ever even thought about it before, but that just would seem natural to me because they're more on our side. They want the project to go forward. They're economic development, just like it says. They want the project. The planner is almost the opposite. The planner is, we're the guys that have the rules, and you got to follow our rules. And we want X, Y, and Z, and which you have to go through that process. But I would look at the economic development person as the person that would help us, whereas the planner is somebody I gotta negotiate with and kind of work through. I remember on this project when we opened, there was another high-end project down the road in another city, and I spoke at a shopping center conference with the guy that did the other project. We were friendly, and the economic director from Yorba Linda was at this meeting, and she said, "Well, gosh, I like the way they have their, I can't remember what it was, their doors. They got wood doors. Yeah, but they don't have X, Y, Z that we have." So it's like the planners, had different focuses. They're both high-end, great projects. They had better doors than we had. We had better, whatever it was, windows, or so we we had much more articulated buildings, I think, but they had better doors. So we can't have everything. There's price points that go into it, but anyways, that's the planners are. They have what they want, and you got to get to where it works, but you can't give the planners everything they want, or it will make economic sense sometimes. But the economic development, the long answer has been very helpful to us in a lot of our projects.
Well, so today we've kind of learned through Yorba Linda Town Center how successfully a city can work with a developer. This has been a great conversation. Thank you so much for joining me today. This has been fascinating.
Well, thank you very much for having us.
Excellent. If you like this podcast, do me a favor. Go into the app that you're listening to us right now or watching us and give us a rating, or even better, give us a review. Just write like one sentence, like one thing that you liked about the show. And be sure you are subscribed to Where We Buy. We're on the iPhone podcast app. We're on Spotify, pretty much anywhere you can get a podcast. Just search for Where We Buy. We're also on the web at wherewebuy.show. Now, if you've got a specific question about retail, shopping centers, retail real estate, anything like that, feel free to connect with me and message with me on LinkedIn. Just search for James Cook, JLL. And as always, our theme music is Run in the Night by the Good Lords under Creative Commons license.